January 30th, 1991. East of Baghdad, two Iraqi fighter jets rip across the skies. They are MiG-25 Foxbats, what remains of Iraq's battered air force. Their pilots know exactly what they're flying into. Soviet machines, built 2 decades earlier, once feared, now outdated relics. Against them looms the unmatched predator of the skies, the F-15 Eagle. A duel no one expected to be fair. But what happened next was something that wasn't supposed to be possible. August 1990. Saddam Hussein commands the 4th largest military force on the planet. For over a decade, Iraq's dictator has ruled through fear, stamping out opposition and tightening his ruthless grip on power. But now his eyes turn outward. On August 2nd, Saddam ordered his tanks to storm into neighboring Kuwait, a small Gulf nation resting on vast oil reserves. Kuwait's tiny army is swept aside in hours. The country collapses within days. The invasion shocks the world. Diplomatic talks falter, leaving one choice: decisive military action. That night, 28 nations, spanning Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Arab League, stood together against Saddam Hussein. But Saddam refuses to back down. And now, he must face the largest air assault since the Second World War. Within hours, Iraq is under siege. Hundreds of coalition jets scream through the night sky, tearing apart the country's defenses with surgical precision. First, the communication hubs fall. Next, ground control stations, vital to guiding Iraqi pilots, are smashed into silence. Without them, Iraq's airmen are alone, cut off, flying blind. Still, some take to the air. Brave, desperate, outnumbered. Many are shot down. Hundreds more aircraft are destroyed in their shelters, burned before they ever take off. With his air force collapsing, Saddam makes a desperate move. He orders the surviving jets to escape, to flee across the border into neighboring Iran, beyond the coalition's reach. For Saddam, it is an act of sheer survival. January 26, 1991. Iraqi fighter jets begin their desperate exodus. They skim the desert at low altitude, flying just meters above the sand, straining to stay invisible to coalition radars. Those closest to the border make it in one push. In a single day, 23 aircraft cross into Iran. But for those stationed further west, the gamble is much riskier. They must refuel near Baghdad, all while dodging relentless coalition patrols. It doesn't take long for coalition forces to notice. At first, commanders assume it's a mass defection, pilots abandoning Saddam's doomed cause. But as the days pass, dozens more make the dangerous sprint for the border. Some are intercepted and shot down. Yet many slip through. By January 28th, 82 Iraqi jets had already managed to reach Iran, stunning coalition commanders and baffling the press. Theories swirl. Some believe the pilots are fleeing the war. Others suspect something darker is unfolding. The coalition responds with urgency. 5 separate combat patrols are deployed along the Iranian frontier. Each patrol is made up of pairs of F-15 Eagles, cycling between intercepts and refueling sorties to the south. It becomes a relentless, round-the-clock blockade. A wall in the sky, meant to trap Saddam's surviving aircraft inside Iraq. But Saddam isn't finished. He wants to break that wall. On paper, Iraq's air force still looked formidable. More than 150 of its aircraft were modern fighters, at least by appearance. Among them was the MiG-29 Fulcrum, sleek, agile, and feared by planners before the war. Yet in combat, the Fulcrum proved a bitter disappointment, losing every single engagement. Saddam was furious. His most prized fighter had failed him. Yet one aircraft stood apart from the wreckage, the MiG-25 Foxbat. On the very first night of the air campaign, a Foxbat had shot down an American F-18. Hours later, another forced radar-jamming planes to retreat, exposing an F-15 to a surface-to-air missile. In another clash, 2 Foxbats challenged 4 F-15s. The Americans fired 10 missiles, and every single one missed. The Iraqi pilots had slipped away untouched. Saddam took notice. The MiG-25 was a strange beast. A product of the 1960s Soviet Union, it was never designed for agile dogfights against modern American fighters. It was too heavy, too stiff, and its outdated radar couldn't even track targets flying below the horizon. In theory, it should have been no match for the sleek and deadly F-15. But what the Foxbat lacked in finesse, it compensated for with brute force. It was the fastest combat aircraft ever built, capable of tearing through the skies at more than twice the speed of sound. And slung beneath its wings were enormous R-40 missiles, able to hit targets up to 80 kilometers away. Raw speed, raw power. That was Foxbat's gift. Coalition forces had built a wall in the sky, but Saddam planned to use the Foxbat as his battering ram. The Iraqi pilots knew they would face one of the deadliest fighters ever built, but they believed their plan could tip the balance, if only for a moment. Their idea was to catch the F-15 patrols at their most vulnerable, the moments when the Americans split off to refuel. The plan was simple but daring. Two MiG-25s would approach from opposite directions, initiating a pincer maneuver. If the Eagles turned to engage one MiG, their flank would be exposed to the second. With luck, the Foxbat's sheer speed could close the distance before the F-15s could recover. It was a gamble, but in war, gambles are often all that remain. For days, the Iraqis waited, watching, listening, searching for the right opportunity. Then, in the early afternoon of January 30th, 1991, Iraqi ground control spotted something northeast of Baghdad. Within minutes, two MiG-25s were scrambled from separate bases. Captain Mahmoud Awad was vectored north of Baghdad. Captain Muhammad as Samurai launched south. The Foxbats roared skyward, climbing to 42,000 feet. As they cleared the city, their attack began, the long-awaited pincer maneuver. Captain Muhammad as Samurai is the first to secure radar lock. He wastes no time. An R-40 missile tears away from his MiG. But seconds later, something feels wrong. The missile isn't tracking properly. His radar screen is nearly empty, because there's nothing there. It's a false alarm. Iraqi ground control had mistaken a radar anomaly for an incoming target over eastern Baghdad. The missile vanishes into the empty sky. Yet far to the south, 500 kilometers away, an American E-3 Sentry is watching everything. High above Saudi Arabia, its massive radar dishes pick up the Iraqi Foxbats. The airborne command instantly alerts a nearby pair of F-15 Eagles, patrolling just 65 kilometers from the border. The Eagles are piloted by Captain Tom Dietz and Captain Bob Heumann. For a moment, it looks like a confrontation is inevitable. But then, the warning is abruptly canceled. The Iraqis seem to be pulling back, retreating toward Baghdad's heavily defended airspace. Dietz and Heumann relax their grips on the stick. The crisis, it seems, is over. But seconds later, the situation shifts again. Iraqi ground control orders the Foxbats to turn back. Awad and As Samurai throttle their engines into full afterburner. Flames roar, and the MiGs surge to Mach 2, racing straight toward the F-15s. The Sentry crew shouts fresh warnings, bandits inbound, hot. Dietz and Heumann yank their Eagles around to face the threat. Now, the two sides are screaming toward each other head-on. Not the careful ambush the Iraqis had planned, but a fight all the same. The Foxbats hold the advantage in altitude, 7,000 feet above the Eagles. But their outdated radars struggle. Designed without look-down capability, the MiGs are just barely able to track the American fighters below. Captain Bob Heumann is the first to lock on. He fires an AIM-7 Sparrow missile at As Samurai, but the missile never ignites. Dead weight falls away. Heumann quickly launches a second. This time it leaves the rail, but in those critical moments, the MiGs have also secured lock. As Samurai fires back, losing a massive R-40, Heumann reacts instantly, diving south, pumping out countermeasures. As Samurai banks north, trying to break the AIM-7's track. The missile times out harmlessly, but his R-40 still detonates close enough to Heumann's jet to blast fragments into the F-15's left engine. The Eagle shudders, damaged but still flying. Meanwhile, Captain Tom Dietz has his sights on Captain Awad. He launches an AIM-7. Nothing. The missile fails to ignite. He tries again. This one doesn't even detach from the rail. A third shot, another failure. 3 missiles, 3 malfunctions. Suddenly, Dietz's radar screams with warning tones. An R-40 is inbound, locked onto his Eagle. He yanks his jet into a hard right brake, diving into a defensive maneuver. The skies over Baghdad have become a deadly storm, missiles flashing, jets twisting, technology faltering at the worst possible moment. While Dietz maneuvers hard to escape the incoming R-40, his wingman Heeman presses the attack. He locks onto As Samurai again and fires another AIM-7. The missile streaks away, but the fight has already shifted, because Captain Mahmoud Awad has now turned his Foxbat toward Heeman. Awad fires, and suddenly Heeman is hunted. He drops chaff and flares, twisting eastward to evade. His Sparrow missile loses lock and burns out in the distance. Both American pilots are now on the defensive. Inside the cockpits, tension spikes. Alarms blare. The Eagles have fired multiple missiles, but every attempt has either malfunctioned or missed. The Iraqi Foxbats, against all odds, are still intact, roaring across the sky at blistering speed. Dietz, realizing the fight is spiraling out of control, makes the call, bug out. We're done here. The two F-15s break east, disengaging from the fight. At the same moment, Awad and As Samurai pull west, retreating back toward Baghdad's protective umbrella of surface-to-air missiles. The battle ends almost as suddenly as it began. Two MiG-25s return safely to their airfields. Two F-15s limp back to base, one of them damaged, both shaken. For the Iraqis, it is nothing short of remarkable. They had just stood toe-to-toe with America's most lethal fighters and survived. Against every expectation, the Iraqi pilots had done the unthinkable. They went head-to-head with the F-15 Eagle, the most feared air superiority fighter in the world, and lived to tell the tale. Both Foxbats returned intact, and though one American F-15 limped away with damage, the fact remained. The Eagles had failed to score a single confirmed kill. In Baghdad, the encounter was trumpeted as a victory. Iraqi state media praised Awad and As Samurai as heroes, certain they had downed at least one American jet. The claim spread quickly. To a nation battered by bombing, the story became a spark of pride. In Washington, the response was far colder. American officials flatly denied the reports, insisting no F-15 had been lost or even seriously hit. To the public, it was dismissed as yet another inflated tale from Saddam's regime. But behind the scenes, there was unease. The truth was harder to ignore. Multiple American missiles had failed in combat. 10 fired in earlier clashes, several more in this one. Yet not a single Iraqi Foxbat had been destroyed. Confidence, for a moment, had been shaken. For Iraq, it was a fleeting triumph. A rare stand in the skies, proof that even in the darkest of wars, surprise and daring could bend the balance, if only briefly. For Iraq, the duel was a symbolic success, but it could not change the course of the war. The coalition's overwhelming air dominance remained unbroken. Day after day, hundreds of sorties hammered Iraq's military, infrastructure, and supply lines. The skies belonged to the Americans and their allies. Within weeks, Saddam's forces collapsed in Kuwait. His grip on the oil-rich nation was torn away, and the Gulf War was effectively lost. The daring Foxbat ambush became nothing more than a footnote, an isolated moment of defiance against impossible odds. Meanwhile, the Iraqi Air Force itself was vanishing. Nearly 100 aircraft that had managed to escape into Iran were never returned. Seized by the Iranians, they marked the silent end of what had once been one of the region's largest air forces. From the fourth largest military on Earth, to a force gutted and humiliated. The air battle over Baghdad on January 30th, 1991, though nearly forgotten, served as a reminder. Even the most dominant power can be jolted by surprise, by determination, by the slimmest chance of luck. For Iraq, it was a final breath of resistance. For America, it was an uncomfortable lesson. Air supremacy can never be taken for granted. Long before the skies over Baghdad lit up, another ambush had shaken American air power. December 14, 1966. A formation of USF 105 Thunder Chiefs thundered across North Vietnam, bound for a critical supply hub near Hanoi. They expected the usual defenses, walls of anti-aircraft fire, volleys of deadly SAMs. But that day, something different awaited them. High above, a flight of newly introduced MiG-21 fighters lay in wait. Sleek, supersonic, armed with heat-seeking missiles, they were built for one thing: interception and kill. The American F-105s never saw them coming. Before the mission ended, another U.S. jet had been blown out of the sky, victim to an ambush planned with patience and executed with precision. The skies over Vietnam proved a harsh truth. Air wars are not just about machines. They are contests of strategy, deception, and timing. A lesson that would echo, decades later, over the deserts of Iraq. The story of Iraq's Foxbat ambush and the echoes from Vietnam reveal something deeper about air combat. It isn't just speed or radar or missiles that decide the outcome. It's the element of surprise, the timing of a strike, the courage or desperation of those willing to gamble everything in the sky. Moments like these rarely alter the grand course of war. Saddam Hussein still fell back, his forces crushed, his air force scattered. But for the men in those cockpits, and for the commanders who watched in shock, these clashes carried lessons. That even the most advanced machines can falter. That even the strongest can be caught off balance. For me, this story became more than just another project. I wanted every scene to feel alive, every clash to carry weight. I rebuilt dogfights frame by frame, sifted through endless footage, and crafted animations to bring it all together. What started as a typical idea grew into something bigger. 50 cinematic sequences later, the vision was complete. And there's more. On Nebula, I've been able to tell stories without compromise, deeper dives, longer runtimes, and projects too ambitious for YouTube alone. From the legendary B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, to the secret battles of the Cold War, to engineering marvels that reshaped history, Nebula is where these stories live in full. It's a place built by creators, owned by creators, and powered by the people who want stories told without shortcuts. So if you want to see more, join me there. Because sometimes, the best stories are the ones you've never been told.